Welcome to the Eye on Annapolis Local Business Spotlight. There are thousands of locally owned businesses in the area, some small and some large. Some you may know and others you don't. But one thing they all have in common is a great story, and we want to share it with you. Join us every Saturday as we talk to the founders, the owners, and the managers of local businesses you have come to know and love, and those you will come to know and love. Now here's your host, Jonathon Rondeau, with this week's Local Business Spotlight.
Well, we are up here in Severn in a place that I didn't realize exists, because I think you guys were just that little building on Spa Road, but we are with Jonathon Rondeau, who is the president and CEO of the ARC Central Chesapeake Region, at their headquarters, which, as I said, I didn't know. But thank you very much for inviting me up here to have a talk a little bit about what the ARC does here.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
So when did this building get here?
So our Severn headquarters was officially completed in midpoint or end of 2018, 2019. For 25 years prior to that, the ARC Central Chesapeake Region was on Spa Road, and we still have a regional office and community hub there. So the people we support at that part of the county still utilize that location. But here in Severn, we have administrative office space. Our behavioral health services sits here, as well as professional development for our direct support professionals and other staff. And there's a newly opened community hub for people we support and families who may need resources if they have children with disabilities.
What is the ARC, and what does the ARC do?
Yeah, so the ARC Central Chesapeake Region was created 60 years ago, where a group of parents in Anne Arundel County wanted more opportunity for their kids. So in the late 50s, early 60s, there still wasn't access to education opportunities for people with disabilities. There was no law yet that required free and appropriate education. Pediatricians were still telling, if you had a child with a disability, that by the time they were, if not when they were a baby, but by the time they were 5, that they should send them into an institution. It's hard to believe that still was occurring. And so parents said, we don't want that. And so they created the ARC. And so we are one of 600 ARCs across the country that provide supports and services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we do that in Anne Arundel County and on the counties on the Eastern Shore.
Okay, so this is a really old organization then. I mean, it's the ARC as an entity.
Yes.
Has been around forever. What is your background? What drives you here besides like the Buick in the parking lot?
So I think a lot of people get into the field of supporting people with disabilities sort of by accident. And I think that was my pathway as well. When I was 15, I was looking for a summer job. I'd always gone to camp as a kid, loved camp, and thought that the camp I grew up in would hire me when I was 15, but they didn't. There was too many people applying for 1 or 2 positions. And so I was looking for a summer job and found a camp that supports people with disabilities, and said, I can do anything for 8 weeks, right? And I love camp anyway, so it can't be that bad. And in my first 2 weeks, it was a transformational experience. I worked with 2 adults with disabilities who had never been to camp before. And so there I am at 15 working with one gentleman in his 40s, one in his 60s, who had never experienced swimming before, or horseback riding, or just making choices on their own. And for someone, I think I've reflected a lot about this as an adult, but at the moment, I don't know that I could have described sort of that transformational experience that I felt of, why doesn't everyone have this opportunity? Why did they have to wait until they're 60 or until they're 40? And so I ended up working at that summer camp year round, all through high school. In college, I worked there full time. And then for most of my career, have been supporting either running services or running organizations that support people with disabilities.
You are one lucky dude, man. I mean, to be able to find your calling in such a loud voice at age 15 is impressive.
I think, and it's.
And I mean, you're not that old, but I mean,
yeah, no. So I think it's one of those things that it just happened, and I think throughout my life, even through adversity, I think my family sort of instilled this idea that things happen for a reason. You need to take a moment and pause and reflect. And I think that moment to pause and reflect is something that I think we all don't do enough of. And I think I'm very fortunate that was instilled in such a early age. I have friends now, I'm in my 40s, and who are just pausing to reflect after 40 years of their life. And I think the pandemic's making all of us pause and reflect. And so I think that's been a really interesting piece, but I think also it's really something important that we need to do for the people we support here at the ARC is not make assumptions for them, but allow them to pause and reflect and determine what they want for themselves, and to provide the supports, guidance, and information they need to do that.
Well, something you mentioned about why doesn't everybody have the chance to swim or horseback ride or whatever? And, as I've been doing these, and the more I get involved in my community personally, I find different organizations and programs that are like that. And one similar with different, but is CRAB, which is Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating. And it's like, well, why doesn't everybody with a physical handicap have the ability to go out and sail and experience the Chesapeake Bay? You look at the Annapolis Maritime Museum and Park, and they do a great thing with a lot of the kids that are in public housing. And I see that kids that literally live maybe 10 blocks from the water have never seen it.
Yes.
And there's just so much that's available. And I love that our society has changed that. And I know that, it's a differing ability. Yeah. It's not a disability, but it's an alternate ability. And I think that just what we've been able to do, if you look in the wars, if somebody comes back with, severe injuries from wars in the past, okay, they were relegated to a wheelchair and sitting at home and, getting fat and everything else. Not so more. They're running marathons.
Correct. I think disability has become more well known, or not seen as, it is traumatic, especially if it happens later in life, or it's traumatic if ever a parent, if you have a child with a disability. But there are so many success stories that you can sort of understand that, and everyone knows someone with a disability. I really challenge people, if you don't, to do that. And so I think that allows you to sort of understand, if that happens to you or a family member, that there are real opportunities. It's hard. It's just like hard when anything adverse happens to you. Like, you have to find your tribe, your niche. You need to find the resources in the community to do that. And I think that's one of the things. I've been here at the ARC for 4 years, is a lot of people don't know what we do, and that we've been a resource, and we've grown tremendously over these last 4 years. But still today, I still will meet someone and they'll be like, "What? I didn't know you guys provided that." And I think that for me that hurts more than if someone's unhappy with our services, because I'm like, I want you to know what we're doing, and how you can get connected, because you may not need it today, or you may not know someone who needs our support today, but you will eventually.
You're going to come across somebody that you can say, "Hey, give Jonathan a call at the ARC Central Chesapeake Region." Well, it begs the question, what services do you guys offer? The ARC, we're not just a geometry kind of a term here.
That's right. And so we provide services in two distinct ways. One that the ARC facilitates, so more traditional services where we're supporting people to live, work, and connect with their community. And so in our living options and services, we're supporting people to live in traditional group homes or to live in apartments with their roommate on their own, and providing the staffing support to do that. We also support people who may choose to still live at home with their mom and dad. Not everyone's ready to move out once they become an adult. And so providing that drop-in support. We help people in Anne Arundel County. We have about 55 people who work in essential jobs and have throughout most of the pandemic, and our staff provide them with the employment supports to do that. So making sure that they need job coaching, or if they have difficulty navigating a policy that their employer has, our staff provide that support. And then we've relaunched, because of the pandemic, we stopped it, our community-based day program, where about 100 people every day are in the community for 4 to 6 hours doing enrichment activities, whether that's working out at the Y, whether that's taking a pottery class, whether that's doing yoga, whether that's volunteering in their community. And so direct support professionals will pick up a group of 1 to 5 people, and they'll go out and do those things sort of every day. And then we also provide information referral and some supports for kids and their families. And then on the other side, we provide a program for people who choose to self-direct their services. So if you receive services through the Developmental Disabilities Administration and don't want a provider like the ARC to provide those services, you can then apply to this program through the state, but then you need to pick a fiscal management agency to determine how you're going to spend your budget that you get from the state, and you can hire your own staff, and then we, the ARC, through our fiscal management services, process your payroll. We do your background check. We're essentially your HR, finance office. Then we take care of all the billing to the state, that sort of thing, and provide that support. We support about 1,400 people in that service across the state around that.
Well, you guys are a nonprofit, correct?
We are.
Now, are the services that you offer free?
So
is there a billing into Medicare or how?
So most of the people that we support qualify for services through the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Administration, which is a Medicaid program through the federal community home and community-based waiver services. And so essentially in Maryland, if you have a disability on or before your 22nd birthday, there's an approval process, but generally you would be approved to get supports through the Developmental Disabilities Administration, which means then that money you can then use to seek services or get qualified for services to get, whether it's day services, in-home supports, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, because I mean, obviously it is, I'll say, funding intensive for the work that you do.
Correct. What I would say, though, is none of our children, youth, and their family services are really funded. So that's those services, all our information referral, our family fund, our emergency grants program, all happens through fundraising. There's no dedicated funding source that supports that. And that's an area of increased growth that we've seen. When I got here, we served a handful of people in that program. We serve hundreds of people through information referral, emergency access grants, things like that today.
Interesting. Well, how large is the organization that you've got here? I mean, I know that you said that you serve primarily Anne Arundel County.
And we serve about, in long-term services, about 75 people on the Eastern Shore, on the Mid-County. And if you look at it, people who get services on a regular basis for us, it's about 1,000 people. And then it's about 3,000 people that get touched through information referral, our fiscal management services program, or some of our other sort of ancillary services.
Wow, that's a lot. How many people does it take to run the program?
So we have,
and I know, and obviously you have more than one location.
Yeah, so we have our headquarters in Severn, our regional office and community hub in Annapolis, and then we have a regional office and community hub in Easton, Maryland as well. We have about 400 staff and 100 openings for direct support professionals to do. So even though we have 400 staff, I still have 100 openings in trying to hire. And a lot of that comes from increased growth, but also the pandemic has been really challenging. Prior to the pandemic, we could hire about 30 new direct support professionals a month. We're averaging less than 20 a month right now. And as we take new people into services, we need to hire more people who want to support people with disabilities in the community.
Right. And obviously this is something that you've, speaking on a pandemic level, this is something that you've got to be fairly close with to do. I mean, this is not something that's easily managed.
So we
6 feet apart.
In anticipating that the federal government will have, the OSHA will come out with a guidance that employers of more than 100 people will have to require the vaccine or testing. We have, for all new hires, mandated the COVID-19 vaccine.
Well, you're looking for an awful lot of people. I mean, what's the ideal candidate? What's the type of person that you're looking for?
So there isn't, anyone can be a direct support professional, and that's the beauty of it. I think you have to have, it's more about your motivation. You have to have a desire to want to work with someone. And that can be, we serve all types of people. We serve people who want to be in the community all the time and just need some support to do that, to people who may need more physical assistance. So because they may use a wheelchair or that sort of thing, and then everyone in between. So you just have to have a desire to do that, have a Maryland driver's license, be over 18. And then we do an interview process and a background check. And then we provide a ton of intensive training when you're hired to teach you how to do this job. And we do some job shadowing, that sort of thing. And so I would say over 60% of our new hired direct support professionals may have met someone with a disability. They may have been a caregiver in a different way, but they may not have done this work before. And that's okay. And we will support you and train you on how to do that.
Well, to a degree, with any business, it's kind of nice when they come in green and fresh with a clean slate that you can train them in the ARC way, if you will.
So yeah, there's pluses to both, but yeah, I think that we want to make sure that people thinking that you have to have a degree or experience is not a barrier to employment here.
I imagine that working here and working with your clients, customers, your members, depending on how do you
we just refer them to the people or people we serve
that are served. But I imagine working with these folks has got to be one of the most rewarding things. And obviously it has been for you because it's guided your career for the last, couple decades.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, it always feels good to make a difference, no matter what your sort of career calling is. But I think for me, and I think for a lot of our staff, it's about seeing how the support we provide or the change that through our small efforts, when you look at it one person at a time, makes a big impact in the community. When you see someone, when my first year here at the ARC, I was meeting all the people we support, and there was one person we supported who was very upset that she loved her roommates, but she had met a person at her day program that she didn't want to necessarily marry him, but they wanted to live together. And she was like, but that's not possible, so I need to move out of the ARC. And I said, why isn't that possible? We had a conversation. We, in the next 8 months, had a house that we were renovating to be more accessible, and her significant other moved into that house together. Now, they were very clear, we don't want to share a room, and we were fine with it. Like, that's okay. But that wasn't off the table either, because relationships and who you connect with is really important in your life. And just because you have a disability and you need a lot of support doesn't mean that the person that's most important to you in your life shouldn't be able to live with you. And so I think that piece and her staff who still support her to this day, seeing how much she's changed and how your mindset, how she's just happier and her significant other is, like, that's why we do the work. But it's not about the feeling. It's about that we made a difference in that person's life for something that was really not hard. We were going to have that opening and that ability to do that regardless. And so I think it's a lot of times it's just really listening to the people we support. And I see my job and our staff at every level's job is to figure out how we make that happen. Just like we all have that in our own lives. We all have our own cheerleading section that are doing that.
That's beautiful. I mean, that really is amazing that you're able to accommodate that. And you took her perception, preconceived, false notion, and upended it.
And we have almost over hundreds of those stories now, some at much smaller scale and some at larger. But I think for a long time in a lot of disability organizations, that wasn't even the way you thought. It was about just providing care in a meaningful way. But for me, and I think for our board and our vision is really about equity and access. And do you vision for yourself? It's not my job to determine that. My job is to help you help reduce whatever barrier there is to how you get to that point. And I think that cultural switch is what has fed our growth, our ability to serve more people, because that's what people are looking for. People with disabilities and their family aren't happy with the status quo of sort of the traditional thing that what a lot of people think of is that when you graduate school, you may or may not get a job. You may or may not live independently. You have to live with your mom and dad until you're in your 50s. Everyone's path is different. And how do we figure that out?
And it's not the case. And I'll tell you, over the years, I mean, when I'm considerably older than you, but when, growing up, I mean, if somebody was, and at the time the term was retarded, and thank you to, the Marcelinos and to Rosa for getting all those laws passed to ban that. But, if you had a mental or developmental disability, your card was punched. Okay, you're going to be institutionalized or something like that when your parent, maybe if you're lucky, you could live at home if your parents had the wherewithal to support you. Otherwise, you're probably going to become a ward of the state. And it's so reassuring and so good to see that, a disability is not, I mean, there are some hurdles for sure, but it is not something it's not this big giant wall that can't be scaled at all.
Absolutely. No, I think that's important. And I think, I often remind my team here, people I talk to, it's not as complicated as you think. We all have hurdles in our own life. And so if you think about the hurdles that you and your family go through, even if it's not dealing with a disability, they felt unachievable at some time that you were going through that. So what's different over here? And I think as a society, as we're having equity conversations, whether it's racial equity, gender equity, whatever those pieces are, disabilities is an important part of that conversation. People with disabilities still are one of the most disenfranchised minority groups in the United States. They have the lowest employment rates. They have the lowest housing rates. Most people with developmental disabilities that live below the poverty line. Those are real challenges that this particular group has. And not that those other equity conversations aren't equally important, but this needs to also be an important part of that conversation.
I'll tell you, in Annapolis, it's funny. I go out of my way to support Biddy and Bowes, which is, for those that aren't aware, it is a coffee shop. It's now I think it's a franchise. Now they probably have like a dozen locations all across the country. Started in Wilmington, North Carolina, but parents had 2 disabled children. And they said, hey, we are able to do this. And they've developed these coffee shops that hire pretty much exclusively those with any kind with a disability. And it's just putting what you just said, okay, well, you're going to have low employment. You're going to have, low wages and poverty and everything else. It's sort of upending that. And I mean, I go out of my way to buy I don't drink coffee, but hot chocolate there. And, you tip big. I mean, and it's a wonderful experience. That's something really small that you could do. Obviously, on a larger scale, you could come to work here. I mean, what is the benefit of working here?
So, but I just to piggyback on what you're saying, I think what Biddy Bowes and other, that's a step in the right direction. When we're really going to talk about equity is when Starbucks on West Street also hires someone with a disability to work there, and that all the other businesses right down there in that downtown district, I'd be willing to bet each one of them that has a help wanted sign, we support someone who could help meet their business need. And so I think, so to answer your question, that's something people can do. They can reach out to us. We can connect you with our workforce development team and get you connected with people who are ready to work, who are a lot of times trained and ready to provide those services to those businesses. Because I think it's pockets of success, the Biddy Bowes stories, or the story I talked about, that the woman who got to live with her significant other. Those are good examples, but we as a society, and particularly, I don't think the ARC has, and this is one of our strategic questions, how do we scale that work? How do we bring it to a level where anyone who wants an opportunity and has a disability in Anne Arundel County has that? And I know the county exec talks about that when he talks about a county where there's opportunity for all. And when he talks about all, it's really, truly all in every aspect of that. That's a good first step. But the next step is we have to actually do something. I mean,
we are a nation built on opportunity. So, I mean, there really should be no reason. And I know, and I don't know whether his family still owns it, but when Jerry Gimelstob owned a bunch of the McDonald's franchises, I know he worked very hard to work with, I believe it was through Providence Center, to employ people with disabilities.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great employers. The United States Naval Academy is an example. Even throughout the pandemic, we have a number of people who we support that are working there, as well as other local businesses that are doing that. And so I think, again, there's examples and other people who are learning from those experiences. It's how do we do that more?
What are the perks of, I mean, obviously you've got an emotional perk of working here, okay? I mean, I think that your heart comes home full at the end of every day about the work that you're doing here. And what is the type of work that somebody, if I go downstairs to apply, I mean, what could I expect?
So I think if you become a direct support professional here, I think knowing that you're going to have ongoing support to get initially trained, but ongoing support to provide you guidance in that. But I think this is a job that isn't necessarily about the paycheck. We continue to work on increasing our starting salary, but it's about sort of the ongoing benefits of making sure our culture is one that if something happens with your family, you need to take a day off, you text your manager and you're off. That's our culture. You don't have to find your own coverage. You're not going to get a guilt trip that you have to take that time off. And not very many businesses can say that. I think the other is we also make sure that all of our benefits that we provide, including our health insurance, is affordable regardless of what your starting salary is. So making sure that whether it's for you or your whole family, that you can afford the health insurance that we provide, as well as some of those other pieces. But I think the other is we have a lot of flexibility for people. So there's weekend shifts, there's night shifts. You can work part-time, you can work full-time. You can go from full-time, and then if you need to make a switch to part-time, you're able to do that. So I think there's usually a little bit of something for everyone. And again, we're direct support professionals are supporting people in employment, in the community, if you're working in our day services, helping someone live in their home. And so there's a wide variety of what you would be doing or what you can do to support people, that there's usually the right connection point for you.
Does sound like a lot of flexibility. Sounds like a fantastic place to work. TheArcCCR.org is the website. Does that have all the information that
Yep.
would need?
That's our general website. If you go to the arcccr.org/DSP, that's where you can find out more what the role of the direct support professional is. That's our frontline employee, as well as you can apply right there as well.
Okay, and just for those that are listening, because it is audio, ARC is not the boat; it is the geometric shape, so it's got a C, the ARC, and thearcccr.org is the website. We are speaking with Jonathon Rondeau, who is the president and CEO of the ARC Central Chesapeake Region. And when I pulled into your parking lot, I happened to notice that there is a big sign saying coming this fall, which is rapidly ending, but the community hub. What's that all about?
So here in Severn and Annapolis and in Easton, so all three of our physical office locations, we've created a community hub. And what that is twofold. One, it's a place where our family navigator can meet with families who have children or adult children with disabilities and needs access to information services. So sometimes we have a program called Project Learn, where we're supporting families to learn more about the IEP process, individual education plan, if you have a child with a developmental disability. So it's a place for that. It's also a place that when the people we support are out in the community during the day, if they need to stop in. So here in Severn, our community hub has a fully accessible bathroom that has an adult changing station. So prior to that, in this part of the county, if you were someone who used a wheelchair and needed to be transferred out of that chair to be changed, you'd have to go home in the middle of the day to make that happen. That's not convenient. That's not what you or I do when we're out in the community. Right. So that's what's here at this community hub. And so it's a place where people can get connected to the computer. They can figure out what they want to do. People in our employment program, if they're working with a job developer to look for jobs, they can apply right on in the computers in there, and then go back out if they're going to interviews or to go sort of scout different locations. So they're just a welcoming place that can be sort of a resource for the community.
Yeah, it's sort of a one-stop resource thing for your community. You said you're going to have that here as well as in Annapolis?
So the one in Annapolis opened this summer. The one in Easton opened last week, and this one is nearly complete. So in next week or so. So still within the fall.
So it really is the fall.
It is. It's not one of those. It's not one of those signs that you drive past for 3 years that says coming in 2019 and never is open.
Well, I'll throw a dig into the city of Annapolis. That only happens in the city of Annapolis. Coming in spring of 2020, and it's like 2025 it finally opens up. Jonathon Rondeau, thank you very much for your time this morning. And as we leave here, what is one thing that you'd like the people that are listening to this, what one takeaway do you want to have? I mean, I think your story is amazing that, you were at summer camp and, maybe it was some mosquito that was infected with something or other that bit you, but you've got this passion that has carried on for decades. You seem to be the ideal person to lead this organization and to lead the community, because our need is great. I mean, the numbers that you said, you've got about 1,000 people that are served on a daily basis, and 3,000 more that are served periodically. Yeah. But what's the takeaway that you want people that are listening to this to know about the ARC Central Chesapeake Region?
I think that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have the same desires and need the same access and opportunity as all of us. And each of us, every listener, can play a role in that, whether it's getting connected to volunteer, donate, connect people who are looking for jobs to jobs that are working with organizations that like the ARC that supports people with disabilities. But just that broader understanding that just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the same access and opportunity as everyone else.
Starts with you, not you, but with whoever's listening here. It's and it doesn't take much, as we've seen time and time again. From back with Paul Revere, I guess it was. With you starting a movement is pretty easy once the ball gets rolling. And
exactly.
You guys are doing a great job of getting that here at the ARC Central Chesapeake Region. And again, with Jonathon Rondeau, who is the president and CEO. Or are you CEO and president? Which is it?
President and CEO. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Thank you very much for your time today. And, good luck with the expansion of your workforce. And gosh, just keep doing this wonderful work that the organization is doing.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with your listeners more about what we do.
Thanks for listening to this week's Local Business Spotlight. Please make sure to visit eyeonannapolis.net for all your local news, events, and opinion. And in case you haven't already, please subscribe to the Eye on Annapolis Daily News Brief, where we bring you all the day's local news direct to your phone, tablet, or computer in about 10 minutes. It comes to you at 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.